definitely need to take a couple minutes to talk about these climate and oil protests, and of course the police response to them that everyone's cheering about. And it brings back vibes to me of how divided we are. When our protest group protests, they're good and just. And when the other protest group on the other side protests, they deserve everything they get. Cops show Brit police how to deal with eco-protesters. Now, what's the deal with these eco-oil protesters? Some of these protesters shut down the road going into Burning Man in Nevada, and these people are chained to this thing, right? And they come crashing through despite the fact that they're chained to this thing. They ram this trailer that they use to block the road. Police, they are the number one criminals on the street, not the protesters. But before you get me wrong, I'm not saying that these misguided climate protesters have the right of it. In fact, we're seeing a lot of these kind of protests around the world. In Germany, in Europe, you're seeing these things. So because people are fed up with the way that these climate protesters, these oil protesters are doing things, the first knee-jerk reaction is that we cheer. I'm not here to side with these climate protesters. So Burning Man, people are trying to get into Burning Man, and these guys are chaining themselves to this trailer that they parked across the road, and people come in and they're trying to move them, they're trying to move their stuff. But you do see a pattern here, right? The cars are lining up. They say the cars lined up for miles. That actually wasn't true. So they weren't actually in the road for that long. What you see is people starting to go around. You see these people pissed off, and rightly so, right? Whether you love or hate Burning Man and all the shenanigans that go on there, the fact is this is a public road and people have a right to pass. Now, that doesn't mean that blocking a road in a protest is always bad. It makes you the villain. People say, well, that's not a way to do it. That's not the way to protest. Actually, that works to draw attention to your cause, although it doesn't necessarily work to get support to your cause. I'm looking at people talking to these protesters, and I'll link to this video, the full video, so you can see this in the comments with audio and things like that. And they're arguing and they're insulting each other, and they're doing what we gringos, what we United Statesians do to each other, even more aggressively perhaps than the Europeans. And people start going around. People are justifiably getting pissed. Now, the first rule, I think, of a protest that blocks a road, it's another thing to block peaceful people from going on their way, right? And people do have a right to move you out of the way. But what we always forget when we get this lynch mob, our party against their party mentality, is that we should always be using the least possible force. There should always be another way around, right? So you might be in downtown Portland and you block a road in protest, and it's not necessarily a terrible thing to inconvenience people. If lazy, apathetic people are not inconvenienced to be shown corruption, they will never open their eyes. That said, if you're blocking the road over here in downtown Portland or Seattle or Dallas, and there's another road to go around, it's not quite the same thing, because you're not actually preventing them traveling, you're just making a statement. There's this group, Just Stop Oil, that you can go to their site. One of the groups that was in this Nevada situation was this Extinction Rebellion. There's these different groups, and people can sign up and they can do this slow march protest, right? You can find their websites, and what I see is we're always joining this kind of our party, our side. Those people should be in prison, we say of Black Lives Matter, we say of climate protesters. The left and the climate protesters and the Black Lives Matter say the Bundys should be in prison. The right-wing protesters, they're still putting people in prison from protesting at the Capitol on January 6th. And even though I've never been a Trump supporter, those people were not the violent ones at the Capitol. They were exercising their right to protest. And as always, the police were the violent ones that were out of control. This is London, right? The video, Daily Mail says he plowed through. He didn't plow through anybody. Plowing through is what police do. This guy slowly pushed them out of the way. It's not like there's an easy route for him to go around, and he pushed through them. Sensational headlines when we, the people, try to peacefully resolve issues, and yet subdued headlines that justify the police when they act like crazy psychopaths, whether they're tribal police, whether they're federal police, whether they're Bureau of Land Management. Now, we've seen this for years. You guys remember the Bundy Ranch. You remember the Bundy Ranch. I was there at the Bundy Ranch. And yes, the patriot movement tends to be kind of in their own camp, and they're always hating on everybody else and scrapping against the other side. And that's why this patriot movement that was going on in 2014, 2015 basically fell apart, because they wanted freedom for them, not for the people they didn't like. But that didn't mean that Ammon and Cliven and Ryan Bundy and this family didn't have a just protest for the outrageous behavior of the Bureau of Land Management, violating their land rights, their water rights, killing their cattle, etc., etc. And so their protest was right, just like the message at the Mauer Wildlife Refuge was also right. And yet people are still in prison. Lavoy Finicum was still killed. As we see all these climate protesters all over the place. And people are getting pissed, right? They're throwing water on them. They're blocking the roads. It's not like you can just turn off and go around. These people are marching in a way that makes us not able to function. Whether we're talking about this Nevada incident, or whether we're talking about the European protesters, that if you block the road saying that people using fossil fuels are contaminating the air, saying that having a huge party in the desert is polluting the environment, etc., and yet you're blocking all these people in a hot desert with their cars running, it should seem a little illogical. We need to be protesting the police, the violence, the corruption, the politicians. What's destroying our world and our freedoms isn't fossil fuels. Does that mean we shouldn't develop better things and keep improving our technology? No. But it's not us driving our pickup trucks out into the desert. It's not gasoline that's destroying our world. It's fascism. It's the lack of freedom. It's the lack of caring and loving for each other. People are justifiably pissed off. But what you notice is people are trying to push these people out of the way. They're trying to move their stuff, right? But they're not doing it with violence. They're getting pissed. They're getting mad. But they're trying to pull their stuff off the road, and they're trying to deal with it. Now let's enter when the police show up. And this is when everything changes, because police, rangers, all these people in uniforms all over our countries are psychopaths. They act like criminals. And so the argument here is not that these protesters are right. We have asshole police running in, trying to be important big shots and trying to show their stuff and strut their stuff because they're all roided up and they think they're really important. And we need to stop saying just because the police abuse someone that we disagree with, that therefore today the police are heroes. They're no more heroes than when they abuse the people that are from our families and our camps. So these police rage in here like idiots, right? Like they're coming to save the day, when really all they had to do is roll up and tell these people they had to move their stuff, right? So they come in here and this guy goes through. Now, bear in mind, there's people chained to this trailer. Now, this might be really a stupid thing to do, but nonetheless, that's where we're at. Let's come back. Look what this guy does. This moron comes, and if you or I did this, we would be in prison for assault with a deadly weapon. Now, listen closely. Rams through him, still chained, knocking him over onto the pavement. Listen to what he says. I'm going to take all of you out. You better move. Can you imagine? Have you seen the news stories when people ram through protesters, right? Normal people go to prison for this. But these psychopaths can come up and they can ram into protesters, not only damaging the public property that we, the people, had to pay for in these vehicles, but potentially causing grievous bodily harm. If you or I did that, we would be in jail right now. He comes around with his dumb loudspeaker and says, I'm going to take you all out. You better move. What kind of an insane person does that? Now contrast this with the people that were just trying to get through, right? That came up and were like trying to move their stuff. right? That were trying to get the stuff out of the way, that were trying to push the people out of the way and say, hey, you have to let us through. But did you see any of these people losing control and ramming into these people or threatening their lives? No, because that's not what sane, mentally stable people do. It doesn't mean that you can't get mad when these protesters are constantly disrupting traffic and not letting you get around. And yes, even in Germany and England, etc., people are getting tired of it. But these videos keep saying they're ramming the protesters. Someone trying to force you from moving through and you slowly push them out of the way with your vehicle is not even remotely the same as what these crazy ranger cops did in Nevada. And that's the key difference. Motorcyclist rams past just stop oil protesters. This protester is physically grabbing this person. He has every right to force his way through and move past. Can't we understand the difference? Can't we have our anger and our frustration and our fights, but also understand that there's a limit, that we have to treat each other as human beings, and that we're not immune and above all accountability? See, this is the kind of mental instability that the roided up blue ISIS psychopaths do every day. They think that law and order is threats and intimidation. And it's not. Now, I get it. I was at the Bundy Ranch. I saw the videos. I worked on a lot of this stuff. I reported on a lot of this stuff back then. And in general, the Bundys were very principled protesters. These insane rangers remind me of what we saw at the Bundy Ranch when the people were resisting the Bureau of Land Management and the way they were violating our property rights. The way they grabbed people, stormed by them. Watch the way they grab this woman. Look at this ranger here coming up, grabs her, throws her on the ground. Was that necessary? Absolutely not. And the people were rightly pissed off. There's the criminal right there from the BLM, just like the criminals right here that call themselves rangers, but are actually just raging psychopaths who have no ability to resolve situations and who have no self-control. These people should not be cheered just because they roughed up someone you don't like. Had these police simply rolled up and said, look, you have to move off the road or we're going to detain you. And if they didn't move off the road, they get the people over there, they grab all the stuff, including the protesters, and they move them peacefully off the road. Why is it that the police, who should be trained at using the minimum level of force against the public to resolve a situation, are actually the opposite? Why? Because they're insane, because they're psychopaths, because they have no position to be carrying guns, running around with flashing lights, and be in positions of authority. The everyday civilians that you saw here going to Burning Man were 10 times more capable of dealing with the situation in a peaceful way than the idiots that rolled up with their sirens and flashing lights. And that's what I want us to understand. We see everybody like, yes, yes, run them over. Yes, slam into their trailer. Yes, yes, hurt them. What the heck is wrong with you? If that's the way you're thinking? That's why so many of these fascist rednecks support the police and back the blue. Instead of the local sheriff coming out with calm and just dealing with things, the police come out and start crashing their cars into things like teenage idiots who are drunk and have been snorting cocaine. These cops are the biggest problem, not the oil, not the carbon emissions, not the protesters. That said, you do have a right to push your way through a protester if they're trying to prevent your means of travel, if you don't have another way around. Just keep this stuff in mind, and maybe we can all stop being psychopaths. And yes, we do have the right to travel, and yes, we do have the right to push through you when you're putting your hands on us, when you're blocking our mode of transportation. But we also have to do this with sanity, not like the crazy mental psychopaths from the Nevada police departments. And we see this pattern over and over and over again in the way police behave across the world, especially in the United States. And Nevada, from the Las Vegas Metropolitan PD to the Bureau of Land Management to these rangers and tribal police, this is a theme we see of them in Nevada. They're criminals and they need to be treated as such. All right, you guys, stay safe, love your neighbor, try to defend peacefully, as much as possible. Least possible force to resolve the situation. How about we start thinking about that and having a little bit of self-respect for humanity? As long as they keep dividing us, faction against faction, brother against father, party against party, blue against red, as long as they keep dividing us, always fighting like this, like each other are the problem, we're not going to look up here and realize that these guys up here, the ones in control, the ones with the uniforms, the badges, and sitting in the political offices, they're the ones that are destroying our countries, our freedoms, our liberties, and our justice. All right, you guys, peace. We'll see you next time.